I knew something was wrong the moment my daughter-in-law told me I wasn't allowed to visit anymore. No explanation, just a cold, "It's better for us if you stop coming over." My son brushed it off as stress. But mothers, we feel things. We know when a family is hiding a crack big enough to swallow everything. I tried to respect their space until the neighbor across the street pulled me aside and whispered, "Someone's been going inside your son's house every afternoon, and it's not your daughter-in-law." That was the moment I realized the truth wasn't just hidden, it was being buried. I still remember the exact moment everything shifted, when a home that once felt warm and familiar suddenly became a place I was no longer allowed to enter. It was a Thursday afternoon, bright but strangely quiet. The kind of day when you'd expect to hear a baby giggling through the open windows. Instead, when I knocked on my son's door, the only sound that greeted me was a soft whimpering, and then the uneasy shuffle of hurried footsteps. Leela opened the door just enough for her body to fill the frame, like she didn't want me to see inside. Her face told the whole story before she said a word. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unbrushed, lips cracked from what looked like days of dehydration. She wasn't angry. That's what struck me first. She looked frightened, tense, like a coiled spring, almost as if I were the one she was afraid of. "Oh, hey," she said, her voice thin and shaky. I wasn't expecting you." I held up a small bag of baby clothes I had found on sale. "I just thought I'd drop these off, nothing big. I won't stay long." Her eyes darted behind her, towards something I couldn't see. "Now's not a good time." That was unusual. Leela was always polite, always warm, always grateful for help, sometimes to the point of apologizing too much. But today her tone was clipped, stiff. From inside the house, the baby started crying. Not a soft cry, one of those painful, sharp wails that make your chest tighten. I instinctively tried to step forward. "Is he okay?" But Leela blocked me, pressing her palm against the edge of the door. "He's fine, just tired." She wasn't looking me in the eyes, and that hurt more than her words. "Leela," I said gently, "if you need help—" "No," she cut in, way too quickly, then forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, I need to talk to you about that." A cold feeling crawled up my spine. "About what?" She swallowed hard. Her hands were shaking so much she had to grip the doorknob with both of them. "I think it's best if you stop visiting for a while." I blinked at her. Sure, I'd misheard. "Stop visiting?" "Just for a little bit. I need space. We all do." I laughed nervously because I didn't know what else to do. "Sweetheart, if I've done something—" "You haven't," she said quickly. "You didn't. It's me. I just can't do visitors right now." The baby's crying grew louder, more desperate, echoing through the hall behind her. Leela flinched, but didn't turn. She kept her eyes on me with a tight, almost painful expression, like she was bracing herself for a punch. My heart pulled in two. One part of me felt stabbed, rejected without explanation. The other part, the mother in me, sensed something was horribly off. "Can I at least see Evan?" I asked. That's when he appeared behind her, rubbing sleep from his eyes, hair messy like he'd run his hands through it 100 times. "Mom," he said, sounding surprised but not necessarily happy to see me. "Your wife says you don't want visitors." He sighed and pinched his bridge of his nose. "It's been a long week." "What's going on?" I whispered. He hesitated. Then, like someone who'd memorized a line, he said, "She's overwhelmed. She just needs space." "That's what she said," I replied softly. "But she looks—" "Mom, please don't push. We're handling it." That word again. Handling what? Why did they both look like they'd been surviving a storm I didn't know about? Before I could ask more, a sudden loud slam echoed from inside the house. I jumped. Leela stiffened. Evan's head whipped around toward the hallway. "What was that?" I asked. She shook her head too quickly. "Just the dryer. The door sticks sometimes." I knew that was a lie. I'd done laundry in that house more times than I could count. That dryer door didn't slam. It clicked. The baby cried harder, like something about the sudden noise scared him too. My instincts roared, every cell in my body telling me something wasn't right. But when I reached out to touch Leela's arm, she recoiled like a frightened animal. Not disgusted, terrified. That broke me. Leela, I whispered, whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone. Her lips trembled. For a second, I saw something raw and desperate in her eyes, like she wanted to collapse into my arms and scream the truth. But just as quickly, she shut down. I just need time, she murmured. Evan put a hand on her shoulder, and she flinched at even his touch. Mom, he said, gently but firmly, we'll call you, okay? Just please, give us a few days. I stood there holding that little bag of baby clothes, feeling like it weighed 50 pounds. The door closed slowly, softly, too gently for the desperation behind it. And I stood alone on the porch, listening as the baby cried, listening to Leela's muffled sobs, listening to the secrets that house swallowed whole. I knew then that something terrible was happening inside, something they were terrified for me to see. And for the first time in my life, I walked away from my son's house with more fear than love in my chest. The first day after being turned away, I tried to convince myself it was temporary, just a moment of stress, a bad week, a misunderstanding. But by the third day, the silence felt like a wall being built brick by brick while I stood helpless on the outside. I sent Leela a text in the morning. Good morning, sweetheart. How's the baby? Do you need anything? She replied 4 hours later. We're fine, thank you. No heart emoji, no smile, no invitation. Just those 4 words. Cold, quipped, polite. It felt like talking to a stranger. I tried Evan next. He picked up, but his voice sounded distant, like he was talking while juggling something heavy. Hey, Mom, can I call you back? Is everything okay? You sound exhausted. He paused. Just one beat too long. We're good, just tired. I wanted to scream through the phone. You are not good. I saw your faces. I heard the baby crying. Something is wrong. But instead, I swallowed my worry like I always do. Please tell Leela I'm thinking of her, I said gently. Another pause, then a half-hearted, Yeah, I will. But I could hear something else in his voice. Stress, frustration, maybe even fear. Evan, I whispered, are you sure you don't need help? We're handling it, he said quickly. But then, under his breath, as if he forgot he was still on the line, we're trying. The words punched me in the chest. Trying. Trying meant struggling. Trying meant failing. Trying meant barely staying afloat. Before I could ask what he meant, he cleared his throat and said loudly, Anyway, I have to run. I'll call you later. He didn't. Time stretched in strange ways after that. Minutes became hours, and every hour felt like another reminder that I wasn't welcome, that I was missing things I should never miss. My grandson's new sounds, new expressions, new everything. A week passed without seeing him. 7 days. 7 mornings of waking up and wondering if he smiled for the first time. 7 nights of imagining him reaching out his tiny hands for someone who wasn't me. When Evan finally texted a photo, a blurry picture of the baby sitting in a playseat, I stared at it for a full minute before the sting hit. His first time holding his head up without wobbling? A milestone I missed. I typed, He looks so big. When did he start doing that? Evan replied, Last week. Last week. Right after I was banned. I had to sit down because my legs actually trembled. It wasn't the milestone itself. It was the realization that the world inside that house was moving forward and I was standing still outside of it. I tried calling again 2 days later. Evan didn't answer. I left a voicemail. Hey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you. Miss you guys. No response. Then I called Leela, straight to voicemail. Then I texted her, Do you need groceries or a break? I can drop food at the door. She responded hours later, We're okay. Thank you. Always the same. Formal, distant, guarded. She hadn't always been like that. When she first married Evan, she used to call me randomly just to chat, just to ask for a recipe or to vent about work. She used to hug me tightly when I visited, used to say, I'm so lucky to have a mother-in-law like you. I still had her first Mother's Day card to me framed in the hallway. I hope one day I'm half the mother you are. Now I couldn't even step inside her front door. What changed? When did I become the person she shut out? The emotional hits kept coming in little unexpected ways. A friend asked me casually at the market, "How's that darling grandson of yours?" I opened my mouth and realized I didn't know. Did he sleep well? Was he eating enough? Did he like tummy time? Was he making new sounds? I had no answers. Just silence. That night, I sat alone at the dining table, staring at the untouched baby blanket I'd been knitting. My hands couldn't move. The yarn felt heavy, like guilt woven into every thread. Was I being punished for something? Had I said something wrong? Done something wrong? Or was something happening inside that house that had nothing to do with me at all? The next day, I tried one last time. I called Evan at lunchtime, praying he'd pick up. He did, but his voice was tense, too tense. "Mom, can we talk later? I'm in the middle of something." "Evan," I said sharply, "are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." He exhaled a long, tired breath that made my chest ache. "We're just dealing with stuff. It's not a big deal." It was the same script again, but it sounded more brittle this time. "What stuff?" He hesitated, a long, loaded silence. Then, almost slipping, he muttered, "It's just, she's not." "Who? Leela?" He went silent again. When he spoke, his voice was strangely flat. "Mom, please, just give us time. We're handling it." Then, more quietly, as if he forgot he was still on the line, "We're trying." It was the second time he'd said it, the second time he'd revealed more than he meant to. Trying. Trying meant struggling. Trying meant failing. Trying meant barely staying afloat. I realized, with chilling clarity, something was breaking inside that home, and they were shutting me out because they didn't want me to see it. By the 10th day, the distance felt unbearable. I couldn't keep sitting at home, wringing my hands, imagining 100 terrible scenarios behind that closed door. Something inside me snapped, not out of anger, but a deep, aching worry I couldn't shake. So I did what any mother would do. I drove to their neighborhood with a small bag of baby essentials and a casserole dish. I told myself I would simply leave the items on the porch and go home. No confrontation, no knocking, just presence. Sometimes a quiet gesture says what words can't. When I pulled into the familiar street, everything looked the same. Neatly cut grass, the sound of kids laughing 2 houses down, wind chimes singing from the porch across the road. But the feeling was different. My son's house sat unnervingly still, like it was holding its breath. I walked up the path slowly, the casserole warm against my palms. I placed it gently by the door, then set the small bag of diapers beside it. Before leaving, I touched the doorknob, not to open it, just to feel connected, even for a moment. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" a voice called. I turned to see Mrs. Calder from across the street, standing by her mailbox. She was a tiny woman in her 70s, always wearing pastel cardigans and sun hats, slightly too big for her head. She waved me over with a hesitant hand. I forced a smile and crossed the street. "Hello, Mrs. Calder." I thought that was you," she said gently. But her eyes were troubled. "It's been a while since I've seen you around here." My smile faltered. "I haven't been visiting much." She glanced at the bag on the porch. "I noticed." There was an awkward pause. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, fingers tapping nervously against the mailbox. "I hope you don't mind me saying something," she began softly. Immediately, my heart tightened. "What is it?" She looked back at my son's house, her lips pressing into a thin line. "It's just, I thought you'd want to know that someone has been going into your son's house every afternoon." At first, her words didn't register. "Someone?" She nodded. "A woman. I assumed she was a relative of yours." My mouth dried. "What does she look like?" Mrs. Calder took a moment, recalling the details with care. "Mid-30s, I'd say. Nicely dressed, not fancy, but put together. Dark hair pulled back. She carries a big black bag, like one of those professional tote bags, and she walks like she knows exactly where she's going. Very confident. I felt a chill crawl slowly up my spine. And she uses a key? I asked quietly. Yes, she nodded, brows drawing together. Every day around 2 o'clock, sometimes earlier, she just walks right in. The world tilted just a little. Confident. A large bag. A key. And visiting regularly. The worst possibilities, the ones every mother prays she never has to consider, flashed across my mind. An affair, some secret arrangement, some unknown woman with access to my son's home. But I pushed those thoughts away as fast as they came. Do you know how long she's been coming? I asked. Mrs. Calder hesitated again, fiddling with her necklace. At least 2 or 3 weeks, maybe more. I didn't think much of it at first. I just assumed she was family. She came so comfortably, so naturally. I swallowed hard. Have you ever seen her with Leela? That's when Mrs. Calder's expression changed. She looked suddenly uncomfortable. Well, no, that's the strange part. I've seen her go in several times when Leela wasn't home. My breath caught. She wasn't home? She repeated. Mrs. Calder nodded. Yes, I'd see her drive off around noon some days, looking awfully tired, and then a bit later, that woman would arrive. My pulse thudded in my ears. Leela leaving, a woman entering, the baby inside, the silence that always felt too heavy, the slammed door she called a dryer. It didn't add up. None of it. Did Evan know? I whispered mostly to myself. I assumed he did, she replied gently. I mean, she has a key, dear. Her voice softened. Honestly, I thought you knew about her too. I thought maybe she was someone helping the family. I stared at her, stunned. She believed I already knew. She believed this was normal. She believed the mother of the household had approved an outsider entering their home daily. But I had known nothing. Absolutely nothing. The realization hit like a blow to the chest. Mrs. Calder, why tell me now? Her eyes filled with concern. Because today, when I saw you place those bags on the porch, you looked worried. And I realized it wasn't my place to assume anymore. She touched my arm lightly. Dear, something about this doesn't feel right, and you deserve to know. I nodded, my throat tight, my mind racing. A sickening unease twisted inside me, the kind that only grows stronger when it's been ignored for too long. Thank you, I managed to say, though the words felt small. As I walked back to my car, I looked once more at my son's house. The windows gave nothing away. The silence hid everything. But now I had questions. Dangerous, essential questions, and I wasn't going to stop until I found answers. Because whatever was happening behind that door, it wasn't what they were telling me. And now, I wasn't just worried. I was afraid. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman Mrs. Calder described. Mid-30s, confident, using a key that shouldn't be hers. By sunrise, I'd already rehearsed a dozen reasons to go back. None of them sounded rational, but the pounding in my chest didn't care about logic. So I drove there. I parked 2 houses down, angled slightly so my car looked like it belonged to someone visiting a neighbor. I kept the engine off, hands wrapped around the steering wheel, watching the front door of my son's house like it was the last window into a life slipping further away from me. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that this was intrusive, that if Evan knew I was sitting here, he'd be upset. But then I remembered his tired voice and the way he'd said, "We're handling it, we're trying," before correcting himself. We. Who was we? The house remained still for half an hour. Then finally, the front door opened. Lila stepped out. I expected her usual polished self. She was always put together, fresh-faced, her hair done even on the hardest days. But today, she looked undone. Gaunt. There were circles under her eyes so dark they looked bruised. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and she walked as if gravity kept shifting beneath her feet. I saw her stumble once on the step, catching herself on the railing. My breath caught. She wasn't just tired. She looked unwell. She went to her car, opened the door, and sat there for a moment with her forehead resting on the steering wheel. Even from a distance, I could tell she was crying. Her shoulders shook and she pressed her palms to her eyes like she was trying to wipe away days of tears. I almost opened my door, almost ran to her, almost broke every boundary I'd been trying to respect. But I didn't, because she drove away before I even made up my mind. I sat back and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. 20 minutes passed before anything else happened. Then a silver SUV pulled up in the driveway. Her. I knew it instantly. Even without seeing her face clearly, I recognized the confident stride Mrs. Calder described. Shoulders back, chin high, like she walked into everyone's life carrying answers no one asked for. She carried a large bag slung over her shoulder, heavy, full, tugging her slightly to one side. And she used a key. Not a knock, not a wait, a key. My skin prickled. Who was she? She disappeared inside like she belonged there. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Every maternal instinct I had screamed to march over there and demand answers. But fear held me in place. Fear of misunderstanding. Fear of crossing a line. Fear of making things worse for Evan, who was already slipping away from me. So I waited. And in that waiting, the guilt hit me. This wasn't who I used to be. I used to trust my son. I used to trust the family he built. I used to believe that if they needed me, they'd ask. I was the mother who bakes a pie and rings the bell, not the mother who hides in her car watching the door. But then there was the other feeling, the heavier one. Fear. Fear that something was happening inside that house, something involving my son, my grandchild, and a stranger with a key, and that I was doing nothing. Evan hadn't called me back in over 2 days. Lila had responded to 2 of my messages with the kind of politeness people use when they want distance. My chest tightened. I stared at the front door so long that the edges of my vision blurred. After nearly 40 minutes, the woman reappeared, not in the confident, composed way she entered, but rushed, almost urgent. She held a black trash bag in one hand. It was knotted at the top, the shape of the contents bulging against the plastic. My mind tried to dismiss it. Probably normal trash, house stuff. Nothing strange. But that lie broke the moment the bag shifted, revealing something. A small pastel blanket, baby-colored, baby-patterned, and then tiny fabric with cartoon ducks. My heart dropped to my stomach. Those were baby clothes, baby items. Why were baby things being thrown out? She tossed the bag into her trunk without hesitation, wiped her hands on her jeans, and climbed into the driver's seat like she had done this 100 times. I tried to breathe normally, tried to think rationally, but nothing was rational. A strange woman was entering my son's house every afternoon, using a key when Lila wasn't home, carrying out bags of baby things. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heartbeat gallop beneath my ribs. 1,000 terrible scenarios flickered through my mind. Was something wrong with my grandchild? Was something happening medically? Was this woman a nurse? A nanny? A therapist? Was she something else? And why hadn't anyone told me? I fumbled for my phone and pulled up Evan's contact. I hovered my thumb over the call button, but something inside me froze. If I confronted him now, what would I even say? Hey, I was spying outside your house and saw something strange. It sounded insane, paranoid, desperate. I lowered the phone. The silver SUV pulled away, turning the corner and disappearing from sight. I stayed there long after she was gone. The image of that trash bag burned in my mind. For the first time since this whole strange distance began, I felt something sharp and cold settle in my chest. Whatever was happening inside that house, whatever was being hidden from me, this wasn't small. This wasn't harmless. This wasn't nothing, the way Evan kept insisting. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. And I was done pretending I didn't see it. By the next morning, my nerves were raw. Sleep never came. Instead, I lay awake replaying the scene from the day before. The woman's brisk steps, the trash bag full of baby items, Lila's exhausted face. Every fragmented detail pressed against my mind like weights. I couldn't stay silent anymore. My hands trembled as I dialed Evan. The phone rang 5 times before he finally picked up. "Mom, can we talk later?" he said, voice tight, rushed. "No," I said firmly, surprising even myself. "We're talking now." A pause. A long one. "What's wrong?" he asked, but he sounded like he already knew or feared he knew. I swallowed hard. Who is that woman? The silence that followed wasn't normal silence. It was loaded, sharp, a crackle of panic forming on the other end. Mom, what? His voice pitched up. What woman? Don't lie to me, I whispered, my throat thick. The woman who comes into your house every afternoon, the one with the big bag, the one using a key. Who is she? For a moment I heard nothing but his uneven breathing. Then he exploded. Why were you there? That's not the question. I need to know who she is, what she's doing in your house, why she has a key. His breath caught. Mom, you can't, this isn't, why would you spy on us? I was worried, I cracked on the last word. Lila looked sick, Evan. She could barely walk. You don't answer your phone, you don't return messages, and then a stranger walks into your house like she owns it. What am I supposed to think? He exhaled shakily, like he was trying to keep himself together. You need to stop, seriously, stop getting involved. That woman had a trash bag filled with baby things, clothes, a blanket. Why would baby items be thrown out? I deserve an explanation. His voice shifted, lower, almost frightened. Mom, please, just leave this alone. No, I said. Tell me what's going on. Another pause, longer than all the others. And then he snapped. I can't do this right now, he said, sharp, breath unsteady. I have to go. Evan? Click. He hung up. Just like that. No goodbye, no reassurance, just a severed connection buzzing in my ear. I stared at the phone, stunned. My son had never hung up on me, not in anger, not in fear, not ever. Something was seriously wrong. My mind spiraled. An affair? Someone he hired behind Lila's back? A nanny? A housekeeper? A caregiver? Something illegal? Every possibility felt worse than the last. My heart hammered in my chest. Right then, a certainty settled into my bones so deeply I felt it pulse. I couldn't wait anymore. I couldn't keep respecting a boundary that made no sense, that left me in the dark while something dangerous might be happening to my family. So I made a decision I swore weeks ago I would make. I grabbed my keys. I was going to the house. For the first time since Lila banned me from visiting, I wasn't asking for permission. I wasn't waiting for an invitation that would never come. I was going there because being a mother means stepping in, even when you're told not to, even when the door is closed in your face. The drive felt longer than ever, every red light mocking my urgency. My palms were slick against the steering wheel. My mouth was dry. I rehearsed what I'd say if Evan was home, if Lila was home, if the woman was there again. But when I turned onto their street, the world felt strangely still. I slowed as I pulled up to the house. And that's when I saw it. Baby toys. Scattered across the front yard like they'd been dropped hastily. No, like they'd been thrown. A little plastic rattle half buried in the grass. A stuffed elephant lying on its side near the walkway. A teething ring on the porch step. My chest tightened. These weren't wind-blown. They weren't left out from playtime. They looked like they'd been tossed aside in a rush, forgotten completely. I got out of the car slowly, scanning the windows. No movement, no shadows, no sound. The house was uncannily quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of a home where a baby naps and parents whisper. Not even the quiet of an empty house. It was the heavy, suffocating quiet that feels wrong, unnatural. I stepped closer, my pulse pounding in my ears. The toys crunched lightly under my feet as I approached the porch. I placed my hand on the railing for balance. My legs weren't steady. Evan? I called softly, even though I knew he wouldn't answer. Nothing. Lila? I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. A chill slid down my spine, settling deep. Something wasn't right. Something was very wrong. I reached the front door and saw it immediately. The thing that made my breath stop, the thing that pulled everything inside me tight. The door wasn't fully closed. It was cracked open. Just an inch. Barely visible unless you were standing right in front of it. But enough. Enough to tell me the one thing I feared most. Whoever left this house last, left in a hurry. And whatever I was about to walk into, I knew it wouldn't be good. I knocked again. Louder this time. My knuckles stung against the wood, but there was no answer. Not a single step from inside. No creak of a floorboard, no faint whisper. Just silence. I hesitated, hands still raised. My chest hammered. Something inside me screamed to leave, to respect their space, to wait like a normal mother-in-law. But every instinct, every maternal nerve in my body refused. I couldn't. Not anymore. I needed to know that my grandson was safe, that my son and daughter-in-law weren't trapped in some private hell I couldn't even imagine. I tried the doorknob gently. It turned. Unlocked. The door swung open with a soft creak, revealing the house in a state of disarray I wasn't prepared for. Laundry lay in heaps on the couch, unfolded and spilling onto the carpet. Dishes, some caked with dried milk, were stacked precariously in the sink. A high chair set empty, crumbs scattered around it. The smell of formula and something faintly sour lingered in the air. I swallowed hard. My stomach turned. I walked slowly through the living room, careful not to trip over a pair of tiny socks. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, oppressive, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes every breath feel sharp. Then I saw him. My grandson, lying in his crib, fast asleep. His tiny chest rose and fell, soft breaths like whispers. The mobile above him spun lazily, casting faint shadows across his peaceful face. His bottles were untouched on the counter, his toys scattered in the yard outside. My heart clenched. How long had he gone without proper care? How long had Leela been struggling in silence while I was shut out? I followed the hallway to the bedroom, each step making me feel more like an intruder. And then I saw her. Leela, curled up on the edge of the bed, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her hair fell in disarray, strands sticking to damp cheeks. She wasn't sleeping. She wasn't resting. She was silently crying, shoulders shaking in tiny, almost imperceptible convulsions. I froze. My mouth went dry. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected to see her like this. Not alone, not unguarded, not unraveling before me in the way I'd only ever glimpsed in dreams too raw to admit aloud. She lifted her head slightly, and her eyes, red, swollen, wide with fear, met mine. You weren't supposed to see me like this," she whispered, barely audible, voice trembling. I faltered. I didn't know what to say. Her lips quivered. She tried to compose herself, but failed miserably. Her hands shook as they rested on her knees. Then, in a sound that tore through my chest, she broke completely. Sobs. Silent, racking sobs that shook her tiny frame. And suddenly, everything made sense. The exhaustion, the dark circles, the trembling hands, the refusal to answer calls, the polite deflections, the panic in Evan's voice. This wasn't cruelty. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rebellion. It was terror. Terrible, suffocating, overwhelming terror. She feared me. She feared my judgment. She feared that if I saw her like this, I would see her as a failure. "Oh, Leela," I whispered. And before I knew it, I was kneeling beside her. My hand hovered over her trembling shoulder. "Shh. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not here to judge you." Her head dropped further into her arms. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. I can't take care of him right. I'm failing. She voice dissolved into more sobs. I stayed there, silent, letting her let it out. I didn't interrupt. I didn't scold. I just sat beside her and let the sound fill the room, letting it escape into the quiet so it wouldn't fester anymore. After what felt like an eternity, she lifted her head slightly. Her eyes, puffy and glassy, met mine again. There was shame there, fear, and an almost tangible wave of guilt. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to handle it alone. I thought if I admitted how bad it was, you'd think I'm a bad mother. No, Leela. You're not a bad mother. You're struggling. You're human. And struggling doesn't mean failing. It means you need help. She body relaxed fractionally, just enough for me to see that she had been carrying this alone for weeks, maybe months. "You can't tell anyone," she said, voice cracking again. "Not Evan, not anyone. She shook her head. "I can't." I squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore. But hiding it doesn't make it better. It's okay to need help, Leela. Everyone needs help sometimes." She blinked, looking at me through the haze of tears. For a fleeting moment, the tension in her body softened. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to ruin things. I just didn't know what to do. I pulled her into a gentle embrace. The sobs came again, but this time I let her cry, and I let myself feel the fear, the heartbreak, the exhaustion that had been building in our family silently. I realized then that this was the truth behind every closed door, every curt message, every panicked phone call. This wasn't secrecy born of malice. It was secrecy born of fear. And fear, left alone, becomes something almost unbearable. I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. Not until you know you're not alone. And for the first time in weeks, Leela let herself break completely in my arms, unguarded, unashamed, and utterly human. I finally understood what had driven all the distance, all the tension, all the silence. And though it terrified me, it also offered a fragile, glimmering hope, because seeing her like this meant she could be saved, she could be helped, she could be supported, and I would be there for her, no matter what. I held Leela in my arms, feeling the tremor of her entire body, the sobs shaking through her like tiny earthquakes. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in my throat. Finally, she lifted her head slightly, and I saw the raw honesty in her eyes, unfiltered, unguarded. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, voice trembling, but steadier than it had been. "Something I should have told you weeks ago, but I couldn't. I was too ashamed." I nodded, my hands still resting gently on her shoulders. "Leela, nothing you tell me will make me stop caring." She swallowed hard, eyes filling with tears again. I hired a caregiver, secretly. She comes in every day to help with the baby." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. A caregiver. That woman. It all made sense. The key, the confidence, the daily visits I'd witnessed. My mind raced to piece together the scenes from the last few days. The trash bag of baby items, Leela's exhaustion, the toys scattered outside. You hired her?" I asked softly, as if speaking too loudly would break the fragile confession. Leela nodded. I couldn't handle it anymore. I hadn't slept for nights. I couldn't eat properly, and I wasn't bonding with him. I felt useless, like I was failing him every single moment. I felt my chest tighten. I had suspected postpartum struggles, but hearing her admit it so plainly made my heart ache. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, voice shaking slightly. "I would have helped. She shook her head, pressing her face to her face. "Evan begged me. He said you would help, that we didn't have to do this alone. But I couldn't. I was too embarrassed. I was too scared of what you'd think." "Scared of me?" I asked, confused. "Yes," her voice wavered. "I didn't ban you because I hated you. I banned you because I was falling apart. I thought if you saw me like this, if you saw that I couldn't do it on my own, you'd think I was an unfit mother, that you'd take him away. I know it sounds crazy." "No," I whispered, shaking my head, tears welling in my eyes. "It's not crazy, Leela. It's fear. But I would never think that. Never. You're my daughter-in-law, and he's my grandson. But you are the mother. I trust you. I always have." She buried her face in my shoulder again, letting herself cry freely. "I couldn't risk you seeing me like this. I couldn't let you know I was failing. I thought if I hid it, everything would stay together, that I could fix it on my own." Her admission explained everything. The slamming dryer door, the refusal to answer calls, the clipped messages, even the panic in Evan's voice. Everything had been a cover for a deeper struggle, a struggle I had almost misread as distance or rejection. "You've been carrying this all by yourself, all this time. You didn't let anyone in?" She nodded against me, body shuddering. I didn't know how. I felt trapped and ashamed, and sometimes I even hated myself for not being able to do it all. My heart ached. The baby was asleep just down the hall, oblivious to the storm his mother had endured. I realized how close we'd come to misunderstanding everything. If I hadn't seen the woman, if I hadn't been pushed to confront Evan, I might never have known. "Leela," I said gently, cupping her face so I could look into her eyes. "You're not failing, you're surviving, and asking for help doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you brave." She blinked, tears streaking her cheeks, looking at me like she couldn't believe I meant it. "But you could have taken him. You could have—" "No," I interrupted firmly, shaking my head. "No, I would never, ever take him from you. I would never see you as unfit. That's not how I see my family. That's not how I see you. You're his mother, and he needs you. You need him alive, present, and safe, not perfect." Her lips trembled, a shaky smile breaking through her tears. I didn't realize that maybe I could trust you." "You can," I said softly, brushing her hair from her face. "And now, you don't have to do this alone. Not anymore." She exhaled slowly, finally letting the weight on her chest loosen just a fraction. I want to fix this. I want to bond with him. I want to be the mother he needs, but I don't know how to start." I pulled her into a firm hug. "We'll start together, step by step. We'll get you rested, we'll get you fed, we'll get you supported, and I'll be here every step of the way." For the first time in weeks, a sense of relief softened the tension around her shoulders. She buried her face in my chest and whispered, "Thank you for not judging me." "You could never be judged by me, not when you're trying, not when you're struggling, not when you're human." And as I held her, listening to the quiet of the house, the soft breathing of the baby, the scattered toys, the lingering scent of late-night formula, I finally understood the truth of what had been hidden from me. The distance, the cold messages, the secrecy, the fear. It wasn't about me. It was about her fight to survive the impossible early weeks of motherhood. And now, finally, she had spoken the truth. The weight of secrets lifted slightly, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed we could begin to heal. Because sometimes the hardest thing to do is ask for help, and sometimes the bravest thing is letting someone in. And in that quiet bedroom, with Leela's sobs finally giving way to small, shaky breaths, I knew we had taken the first step together. The next afternoon, the sound of the front door opening made us all startle. Leela's face went pale, and I felt her tension spike as if someone had pulled her into a protective shell. Then I saw her, the woman from Mrs. Calder's description, standing in the doorway. Her posture was careful, almost apologetic, but there was a softness in her eyes that immediately told me she meant no harm. I hope I'm not intruding," she said quietly. Her voice carried the weight of too many secrets kept for too long. "You're not," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "Please come in." She stepped inside slowly, her gaze flitting to Leela, then to the baby asleep in his crib. She hesitated a moment before speaking. "My name's Claire," she said, and finally she looked directly at me. "I've been helping Leela with the baby." I nodded, letting her continue. I already had guessed, but I needed to hear it from her. She's very ill," she admitted softly. "Severe postpartum depression. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She felt incapable of caring for him. I tried to convince her to tell someone in the family, but she begged me to stay quiet." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. How? How long? "Since he was born. From the beginning," she said. She thought she could handle it alone, but she couldn't. She felt she couldn't trust herself near the baby sometimes. Her gaze flicked toward the crib. There were nights she stood over him, afraid she might hurt him. Not on purpose, just she didn't trust herself. I froze. My heart slammed. The thought of my grandson in danger, even just emotionally, was unbearable. And yet I understood. The fear, the guilt, the shame, it all made sense now. I didn't know, I whispered, my voice breaking. I thought she was shutting me out for some other reason. She shook her head gently. She was ashamed. She was terrified. Every time you called, she panicked. She didn't want to lose anyone. She thought keeping you away would protect her and him. I looked at Leela, still curled on the bed, trembling slightly but listening. She finally met my gaze, eyes red, vulnerable, raw. I didn't want anyone to know, she admitted, voice trembling. I couldn't. I didn't trust myself. I thought, if you saw me, you'd hate me. You'd take him away. I shook my head, stepping closer and taking her hands in mine. Leela, I could never hate you. Not for being human. Not for needing help. Not for being scared. She trembled in my grip, and for the first time, I saw her begin to release some of the tension that had held her captive for weeks. Then as Claire moved toward the counter, she pulled out a small folder. I think you should see this. She handed it to me, and I opened it carefully. Inside were medical reports. Leela had hidden them in a drawer, probably out of shame or fear. I scanned them quickly, reading the notes, the prescriptions, the therapist recommendations. My chest ached. Everything lined up. The sleepless nights, the refusal to answer calls, the panic, the distance. Leela had been carrying this burden alone, trying to manage a condition that could have broken anyone. And she had almost done it too, before we finally stepped in. Claire watched me quietly. She's strong. She's trying. But she can't do it alone. I know, I whispered, my eyes still on the reports. And now, she won't have to. I looked over at Leela again. Her hands fidgeted, her fingers twisted in nervous knots. I stood over him sometimes, and I didn't trust myself. I didn't know if I could. I was scared of what I might do. The words cut through me like ice, but instead of anger, I felt only compassion and determination. You didn't hurt him, I said softly, and now you have support. You're not alone. Not anymore. Claire stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on Leela's shoulder. She's a wonderful mother. She's just sick right now, and that's okay. That doesn't make her weak. Leela exhaled, tears sliding down her cheeks. I didn't know how to ask for help. You did now, I whispered, squeezing her hands. And we're all here. Evan, me, Claire, anyone who loves you and him. You don't have to be alone in this anymore. For the first time in weeks, Leela allowed herself to relax, a tiny exhale of relief escaping her lips. Her shoulders, previously stiff with fear and shame, softened fractionally. She was starting to believe what I already knew. She wasn't failing. She wasn't alone. She was human. And that was enough. As I held her hands and looked at Claire, I realized that the distance, the fear, the silence, it had all been a symptom of something much deeper than I could have imagined. And now, finally, the truth had spoken. The path ahead would be long and the journey toward healing just beginning. But at that moment, in that quiet house filled with scattered toys, soft sunlight, and small, tentative breaths of relief, I felt the first real glimmer of hope, because the truth had finally spoken. I was in the kitchen, helping Lila straighten the dishes and make sure the baby had what he needed, when the sound of the front door opening startled us. My heart skipped a beat. Lila stiffened beside me. Evan. He stepped inside, briefcase in hand, work jacket still on, and froze. His eyes widened, taking in the scene, me standing there, Lila visibly shaken but calmer than before, and the subtle signs of the day-to-day chaos that had overtaken the house. Mom? His voice was a mixture of shock, confusion, and something else I couldn't place immediately. Relief? Guilt? Both? I'm here, I said softly, stepping aside so he could enter. He looked around, taking in the scattered toys, the folded laundry on the counter, the soft hum of the baby monitor. Then his gaze landed on Lila. His shoulders sagged as if the weight he'd been carrying had suddenly doubled. I didn't expect. He trailed off, his eyes flicking nervously between us. Evan, I said gently, we need to talk. About everything. He let out a shuddering breath, and finally the dam broke. He ran a hand through his hair, voice tight, face pale. I didn't know how to handle it. I've been trying to balance work, taking care of him, making sure Lila didn't completely fall apart. And I was doing it alone. I thought I could manage it, but I couldn't. I stopped, swallowed hard, then exhaled shakily. I tried to get help. I thought about calling you weeks ago, but Lila, she wouldn't let me. She was terrified. Terrified you'd judge her, terrified you'd think she was failing, and I didn't want to upset her, so I kept going, kept trying to handle it all myself. I felt my chest tighten as I listened. Everything was unfolding now. The distance, the clipped messages, the panic, the secrecy. I realized in that moment that the entire family had been drowning in silence. Every single one of us. Evan, I whispered, you've been carrying all this on your own? He nodded, voice breaking. I thought I had to. I couldn't let anyone know how bad things were getting, and I was scared. Scared for Lila, scared for him, scared for us. A lump formed in my throat. Evan, you shouldn't have been alone in this. None of you should have been. He looked down, his hands gripping the strap of his briefcase. The night Lila banned you, I cried on the bathroom floor. My heart stopped. You cried? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Disbelief and concern mingling in equal measure. He nodded, eyes glistening. I couldn't sleep. I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do. And I thought maybe if I just pushed through, if I just stayed strong, I could fix everything. But I couldn't. I couldn't fix her. I couldn't fix him. I couldn't even fix myself. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. My son, my once always strong son, reduced to this raw, fragile state. I stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. Evan, it's okay to cry, I said softly. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. He let out a shaky laugh, almost bitter. By the time I realized I couldn't do it alone, I had no idea who to turn to. Lila wouldn't let me call you. I didn't want to push her in the panic, and I didn't want anyone judging her. So I just suffered in silence, pretended everything was fine, while it wasn't. I squeezed his shoulder. You've been brave, but bravery isn't doing it alone. Bravery is asking for help when you need it. He blinked at me, voice barely audible. I didn't know how. I didn't want to make things worse for her or for him. And I thought if you came back, you'd see her struggle and think she wasn't capable. I thought you might try to take him away from her. My chest ached at his confession. I hadn't realized just how much fear had guided Lila and Evan's decisions. The distance, the secrecy, the panic. It wasn't about me at all. It was about fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of being deemed unfit. Fear of losing control. You were protecting her, I said softly. And you were protecting him, but you didn't have to do it alone. Not ever. He lowered his gaze, a small, almost imperceptible nod. I know that now. I couldn't see it then. I reached out, cupping his cheek gently. You're human, Evan, and humans aren't supposed to bear everything by themselves. You were doing the best you could. That's all anyone could ask for. He let out a shaky breath and leaned into my hand, finally allowing himself a moment of vulnerability, the first in weeks. I didn't want anyone to see how broken I was. And then you showed up. I wasn't ready. I'm still not sure I am. I smiled softly, though my own eyes were wet. None of us were ready, but sometimes life doesn't wait for readiness. Sometimes we just step in and we start helping. That's what matters. He exhaled a long, trembling sigh, as if finally letting go of weeks of tension. And in that moment, I realized something important.
The silence had nearly destroyed us, but now, finally, it was breaking. And perhaps, just perhaps, we could start to heal. Together.
The next morning felt almost surreal. The house, once suffused with tension, secrecy, and quiet panic, had an air of fragile calm. Lila sat at the kitchen table, hair still messy, pajamas rumpled, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes I hadn't seen before. And my grandson, my sweet little boy, lay in the crib nearby, cooing softly, oblivious to the storms that had raged around him. I guided Lila to the counter. "You need to eat," I said softly. "Even a small breakfast. You can't help him if you're running on empty." She hesitated, eyes downcast. I don't feel hungry." I placed a hand over hers, gently guiding her to sit. "You don't have to feel hungry. You just need to take it one step at a time, bite by bite, for yourself and for him." She nodded slowly, and I helped her scoop some oatmeal into a bowl, then spooned a little into her mouth. She flinched at first, unused to being cared for in this way, but with each small bite, I saw her shoulders relax, the tension in her face easing. Next came the hardest part, holding the baby. Lila had been terrified of him for so long, afraid she couldn't be trusted with him. I guided her hands around his tiny torso, showing her how to support his head, how to adjust her grip if he stirred. "He's so small," she whispered, voice trembling. "I keep thinking I might do something wrong." "You won't," I said firmly, but gently. "Look at him. He's safe. He's healthy. And you are his mother. You've been carrying him in your heart all this time, even when it felt impossible. That love, it's stronger than any fear." She swallowed hard, a tear escaping down her cheek. I needed you the most when I pushed you away," she admitted, voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I wrapped my arms around her in a hug, letting her sob into my shoulder. "Shh, it's okay. You don't need to apologize. You just need to let me in now. That's enough." Claire, the caregiver, hovered nearby, her hands folded calmly. "She's doing really well. Just a few more guided steps, and she'll feel confident again. And I'll stay part-time, just to help when needed. She doesn't have to do this alone." Lila's lips trembled at the mention of therapy, but I gave her a reassuring look. "We'll go together. We'll support you. You're not facing this by yourself." A small, fragile smile appeared. "Okay, I can try." We spent the day slowly, deliberately, taking tiny steps toward normalcy. I prepared small meals, helped Lila rest while holding the baby, and guided her through quiet moments of play with him. Each laugh, each coo, each hesitant smile was like a tiny victory. By evening, the house finally felt like a home again. Toys were scattered across the floor, but not abandoned. They were part of life, part of a living, breathing family, finally coming back together. The baby slept peacefully, tucked against Lila, who rested on the couch beside me, arms wrapped around him like she had finally found her balance. I sat back, letting the weight of the day settle around us. "You've done so well today," I whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You're stronger than you think." Tears glimmered in her eyes again. She looked at me, voice shaky but honest. "I didn't realize. I needed you. I pushed you away, and now I see you were my lifeline." I smiled softly, squeezing her hand. "We're family. That's what family does." Later, when the house was quiet and the baby slept, Lila reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn key. She held it out to me with trembling hands. "For you," she whispered. I blinked, taken aback. "Lila." She shook her head, tears welling up. "Not because I need help, not because I can't handle it, but because we're a family, and I trust you." My heart ached, overflowing with emotion I couldn't put into words. I took the key, feeling the weight of her trust in my palm. It was more than metal. It was a promise, a bridge rebuilt, a bond restored after weeks of fear, secrecy, and silent suffering. I'll always be here," I said softly. "For you, for him, for both of you." She nodded, a fragile but genuine smile breaking through her tears, and for the first time since this journey began, I felt a sense of peace settle in the room. Later that night, as I watched Lila rocking the baby gently, Claire sitting nearby with quiet vigilance, and Evan finally exhaling, letting go of the tension that had haunted him, I realized something profound. Our family had survived the worst of it, not because of secrecy or control, but because we finally let each other in. We had shared our truths, faced our fears, and embraced the imperfections we'd tried to hide. And now together, we could breathe again. The house was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of healing, of laughter, of trust. And it all began where secrets ended. Because sometimes the bravest thing a family can do is open the door and let love in.